Nowhere in the suburbs, in the cold light of day. There in the midst of it, so alive and alone. Words support like bone, dreaming of Mercy Street, where you're inside out. Dream.
Domestic violence against women. Domestic violence is defined as a pattern of abusive behavior in any relationship that is used by one partner to the other partner. It contains four main types, which are emotional violence, physical violence, economic violence, and sexual violence. Physical violence. Physical violence is defined as the use of physical force, such as slapping, beating, punching, kicking. This type of abuse also includes denying a partner medical care or forcing alcohol use upon him or her. Emotional violence. Emotional violence is a form of mental abuse which undermines an individual's sense of self-worth. It includes scolding, abusing, disregarding, insulting, threatening, isolating, and controlling behavior. Cold war is also regarded as emotional violence. Economic violence. Economic violence is a form of abuse when one intimate partner has control over the other partner's access to economic resources, such as prohibiting women from work or controlling her incomes. Sexual violence. Sexual violence is any kind of unwanted sexual behaviors, which can be listed as sexual harassment, sexual assault, rapes, and sex trade. Magnitude. Domestic violence is a universal problem in both developing and developed countries. In 2005, the WHO conducted a multi-country survey and discovered that, depending on region, between 15% and 71% of women will experience domestic violence. This figure illustrates the difference between regions of the countries included in the survey, according to World Health Organization in 2005. For example, in Australia, domestic violence is a story that occurs every 2 minutes, a story that happens 657 times a day, every day of the year and in every kind of household, in every city and region across Australia. It is a story shared by 1 in 4 Australian women who had experienced physical or sexual violence. It's a story of 1 in 5 women since the age of 15 who experienced violence. 1 in 4 emotional violence, and 1 in 3 women physical violence. The question is that what can we do to stop domestic violence? The old saying that the longest journey begins with a single step applying here. All over the world, many countries have begun to launch campaigns in order to put an end to domestic violence. One of the most popular campaigns is the hashtag Try Beating Me Lightly. It is started with a proposal from Pakistan that would allow men to lightly beat their wives. Compelled by outrage over the proposal, photographer Fahad Rapper picked up his camera and started a photo campaign capturing images of women telling the world that they would do if a man tried beating them lightly. Within a week, his hashtag Try Beating Me Lightly went viral, sparking a global social media conversation about the treatment of women, not only in Pakistan but all around the world. Social media campaigns like hashtag Try Beating Me Lightly are raising awareness about an issue that has long remained in the shadow in many places around the world.
The whole purpose of White Ribbon is making women's safety a man's issue too. And no better way to do that than men speaking to men.
White Ribbon is a leading light. It gives us some direction, and it gives us some guidance, and it gives us a banner that the community can stand behind in challenging these perceptions that this is the norm when clearly it's not.
Australia is the biggest White Ribbon campaign in the world, working with schools, governments, the armed forces, corporations, to end the silence, to encourage men to speak out.
We all know that there is nothing immutable, yet domestic violence has been so deeply ingrained for so long in virtually every culture remaining on earth. Seeing campaigns have been done, it is wondered that whether or not domestic violence had already ended, and what is really happening behind a closed door.
So they say, baby, for everything a reason. And those who loved before will be brought back together. Yeah, those who loved before will be brought back together. And so they say,
started as just a couple of little slaps in the face, and then it just escalated. He threw that chair on my head, and then he picked up the speaker underneath it, held it above his head and was going to throw it on my head. When I screamed at him, please stop, you're going to kill me, he said, I don't care. I don't care because I hate you. I've never been so frightened. I honestly thought I was going to die. I thought he was going to kill me. Sorry. If the police hadn't have come when they did, he would have done. He was still going then. I can't even begin to explain what it felt like. It's almost resigning yourself to the fact that this is it, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. And then I got to the point while he was beating me where it was like, please, this next punch, just let it be the last one so that it does kill me and it stops. I won't feel it anymore. I can still feel his hand round my throat. I can still see his face and feel his breath. Taste that metallic taste at the back of your throat from the blood.
That's when the kind of the mental abuse started kicking in and the verbal abuse. And then I don't actually remember the very first time that he hit me. I don't particularly recall what it was that set it off. I think he backslapped me across the face. And I think I was just in so much shock. I couldn't believe that he'd actually done that to me. He was so nice 90% of the time, but so absolutely vile 10% of the time. When they put my mum's ashes up at the graveyard, he turned around and punched me in the face, so I couldn't go to that because I had a black eye. So I had to make an excuse and say to my dad I couldn't cope with seeing her ashes going.
Domestic abuse originates from man's desire for power and control over their partners. This feeling is due to several situational factors. Violence against women may start with gender inequality. In many countries, especially the developing ones, still exists discrimination against women. This is the stated prejudice that women are not worth being valued and respected, and men have rights to dominate their partners. Domestic abuse in some cases is a behavior learned during the early years of life. Children who frequently witness violence in their houses tend to regard it as a reasonable way to resolve a conflict or to maintain control of the family. In this way, domestic violence is transmitted from one generation to the next, forming a vicious circle. Besides the situational factors, there are individual reasons behind domestic violence. Among the main reasons is financial stress, unemployment, housing foreclosure, mounting debt, place men under considerable pressure. As a result, they resort to violence as a way of relieving stress. According to research in 2009, when unemployment rate reached its highest level, domestic violence agencies simultaneously reported an increase in the number of calls from married women. There's also a connection between domestic violence and alcohol abuse. It's proof that a large quantity of alcohol can increase the drinker's sense of personal power and domination over others. They, in turn, will probably exert power over their wives. The last factor contributing to domestic violence involves the very silence of victims. Why do they put up with violence? Why do they stay? They stay because they still love their husbands. They firmly believe that love can conquer all, including violence. Part of them knows they have to escape immediately, but then the other part of them recalls every precious memory in the past. That man used to be a charming prince, incredibly sweet, attentive and thoughtful. His behavior is such a drastic change from the person they met in the beginning. They constantly looking for the man in the beginning, instead of concentrating on the man that inspired them now. They lure themselves into such a psychological trap. There's a voice inside them that whispers, "Don't leave, he's sure of his sorry, he'll never do it again." Not only love for their partner, but also love for their children. No mother wants the kids to grow up without their father. They stay because of religious belief. Marriage is forever. Divorce can't be settled in any case. They stay because they're dependent on that man. They can't find a job to earn their living on their own. If they loved, what they would do, where they would go, how they would take care of themselves. They are further isolated, no family, no friends, no acquaintances nearby. They are afraid that no one will understand, no one will care.
I stayed because I believed him when he said he wasn't going to do it again. I stayed because I didn't have anywhere to go. I didn't have any money. I didn't have access to any resources. I stayed because my religious community convinced me that I couldn't get divorced because God would hate me. I stayed because I loved him. I stayed because he was the love of my life, and I wanted to believe that love could conquer all, including abuse.
However, staying means suffering for both the community and every single individual. In the first place, domestic violence has an enormous economic impact, from increased healthcare costs to workplace issues such as safety and productivity. Multiple forms of abuse can cause higher healthcare costs over the short and long term for victims and families. The result is that domestic violence drives up healthcare costs for everyone. In the United States, 2003, the cost of intimate partner violence exceeds $5.8 billion each year, $4.1 billion of which is for direct medical and mental health services. Victims of intimate partner violence lost almost 8 million days of paid work because of the violence perpetrated against them. This loss is the equivalent of more than 32,000 full-time jobs and almost 5.6 million days of household productivity. Domestic violence impedes victims' job advancement, compromises safety for employees and their co-workers, and ultimately impacts company profitability. Domestic violence entirely destroys the survivors' lives. First, beginning with a scolding, the violence may lead to serious injury and can result in hospitalization or death. Worse, the effects of domestic violence on women go beyond the immediate physical pain they have to bear at the hands of abusers. Domestic violence victims are predisposed to suffer from an array of psychosomatic illnesses like prolonged depressions, eating disorders, and post-traumatic stress disorder (PTSD). Influence of domestic violence on women have been well documented. But what about the children?
Okay, we're going to be there. What's going on?
They're having a fight because this has been going on forever and ever. Oh my God!
What's the matter? Hello?
Children who only witness domestic violence suffer consequences just as far-reaching and dangerous as those seen in physically battered children. The reactions may range from sadness, confusions, to anxiety, rage, from poor performance at schools to early death.
Influence how a child reacts to a domestic violence situation. Certainly there's the kind of violence and their proximity to it. So there's certainly a difference between a child who maybe was in their bedroom and had headphones on while parents were arguing, and that may be very different than a child who was right there when somebody violently murdered or abused a partner or a parent.
No matter how much adults believe it is hidden from them, children know what is happening between their parents and keep it in their lives. Children all over the world have a dream of a happy family. But with this boy, when his dream come true,